I always ask people this, and I want to know from you, as somebody that wants to empower women, that's an entrepreneur, went to law school, like, where's this drive come from? Where's this passion come from? Was it a person that said you gotta do this? Was it something that you saw with you later in life? I'm always curious to know, where does this come from?
I honestly think it's God.
Whatever you heard of me ain't worthy to me. I'm just too cutthroat, verbal surgery. How you claim to know thyself when your shelf's too high? I keep mine's at eye level. What you trying to hide?
Peace, 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 beautiful family. This is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and this is the Know Thyself podcast. The Know Thyself podcast utilizes the metaphor of the shelf in order to extrapolate the self. And the way we do that is we invite guests to come in and share something about themselves. And before I introduce my guests, I want to give a big shout out to some of people that we rocking with. I want to give a big shout out to my brother Steve and his 2020 collections. Definitely check him out. His accessories, his merch. I also want to shout out my brother June with his Zanuj line, jewelry and accessories. I'm actually wearing one of his right now. So shout out to him. All black owned businesses, which is what I'm talking about. And also, if you're looking for any coaching for tweens and kids ages 4 to 14, I do that, as well as do workshops with youth and young adults. Just hit me up on Instagram at Know Thyself TV. The website should be up and running by the time this comes out. If not, I totally sabotage myself, but it will be out. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so the other thing we always do is, I would like to, as we always do, shout out a group of individuals out there. And today I want to give a big shout out to the creator of all of us, which is the black woman. So shout out to all my black queens out there in this world. I also want to give a big shout out to all the attorneys, you know? All the JDs, anybody working in our law school systems, or just the law period in our criminal justice. I actually have a background in criminal justice, so in another life, right? I also want to give a big shout out to all my entrepreneurs, all my hustlers. I want to give a big shout out to all my fashionistas, yo. All the people that bless us to look good, right? Because even though looking good starts inside, right? First. And I want to give a big super shout out always to all the mothers. Because today I have somebody that I love, that I respect. It's a reunion up in here because this is someone that I've known more than half my life, and it's just a blessing that I'm back in Rhode Island once again. I got here with me my sister from another mother, Remi.
Thank you for that nice introduction.
Absolutely. I'm in your house. I'm so humbled and grateful to be here.
I'm humbled. You even asked me, and it's just good to see you. I mean, we've been connecting. I'm glad to see folks from that we up with, and it's just awesome. Yeah,
and I really think that that speaks to this journey of knowing thyself, because as I always say, one of the biggest blessings of getting older is that you can live your life again. It's deep, because we just spent a little bit chopping it up, even with Hilda, you know what I'm saying? We went to school with her, and we were talking about getting a Bishop McVinney reunion. Shout out to Bishop McVinney Middle School in Providence, Rhode Island. That was the foundation for all of us. But before we go deep diving into that, Remi, I knew someone that I went to school with that was quiet, right? Going back to this again. But I only know what people share to me. So I always ask people if we were to jump back into Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures into a younger Remi, what would we see? What would we smell? Because you're originally from
Rhode Island.
Shout out to R.I., little R.I. Talk to us about your upbringing.
It encompassed a lot of different things. So, I mean, I grew up in Rhode Island, in Providence. When initially it was just myself and my mother. She had me. My dad did not want kids. I'm actually his only child. He didn't want kids. He didn't want anything to do with me. I mean, that changed over time, but he didn't want anything to do with me. Wow. He actually wanted my mom to have an abortion. He was really adamant about like that, and he was just so. Yeah, he didn't come to the hospital when I was born, and that's how upset he was that she did not want to be with me. So when my mom, you know, she got married and she married and, you know, had my brother and my stepfather. I mean, I called him Dad because he was a father figure that I knew, which then that was probably when I was like 2-ish. And so when, or 3, it's like I remember some stuff when I'm younger, but not everything. So that, and he was the father that I knew, and my father didn't like that I was calling another guy Dad. So I guess that, I don't know, was a catalyst to make him step up or whatever.
And you know what? I hear a lot of men talk about that too. That's like, especially, I'm a father too. Like, I might feel some type of way too. You know?
It's like, hey, I mean, you weren't there, my friend. And so, yeah, so and then I would just call him Daddy and my dad Daddy, and he didn't like that either because he was like, what's going on? You know, but. So where my stepfather was good to me, he was not good to my mom. So he was very physically abusive. He would come in, you never knew how he would come in. Sometimes he'd come in okay, other times he'd come in like in a violent rage. Wow, yeah. So that relationship ended, and my mom, you know, years later, she remarried. And again, stepfather was awesome. I mean, he was a father figure to us. Like, I knew he wasn't my dad, and I didn't call him Dad, but he was really good. My first computer he bought it for like when I was on campus. He spent like thousands of dollars and bought me a computer just because he was like, "Oh, you're so good at school. I just want you to succeed." But he was a terrible husband. So he was also physically abusive to my mom. So it just, you know, these things, and I think it was also my mom's upbringing, how she was drawn to, you know, people who were abusive. And after she broke up with him, she was friendly with him. So it was I grew up in a weird, and I forgot to mention, so my mom was still friendly with her exes, so she was very forgiving. So she was still friendly with my dad after, you know, years later, and still friendly with her first husband, and still friendly with her second, and they were all friendly. So, like, they all know each other. So my second stepfather and my father were good friends. Sure. So it was a weird, you know, thing. So I grew up and I don't know, maybe that was a catalyst for me being like forgiving later. Who knows? Maybe that could to me. But yeah, so when that's how you know, so there were good times, bad times. Obviously, it was a mixture of you know, things. My family's West African. My mom was a fun mother. She would, I think I mentioned this before, she would drive around. You can't do this now with your kids, but drive around when we were waiting for our laundry to be done because we didn't have a washer and dryer at the time, and she would let us like in the back of her car, put the seat down, and we'd be rolling around, and she'd be driving in a circle in the parking lot just so we could like wheel around. We're like, whoa!
Six Flags.
Yeah, exactly. Six Flags in the south side of Providence, but but you could not do that now. But it was fun, and we loved it. We did not get injured. But yeah, so we had, I mean, and then, yeah, just resilience and just, you know, I had a good time. Like, my mom built herself up. She finished her degree. She opened up her own business. She was a daycare provider. And, you know, she made a life for us. So it was, you know, I had two sides from us living in the projects and, like, not having I don't have any baby pictures because my mom didn't have enough money to buy, to pay for things. So I don't have any. I think I have one when I was a year old, and that's it. I don't have any pictures of myself. It's like I just didn't have the money. It cost $25 and I didn't have it. So yeah, so it's, you know, but and then I'm here now.
I know, right? Wow. So yeah, there's a lot there that I wanna kind of dive deep into this because we started having this conversation even off camera. not having dad around, but him wanting to be present. And you know, it's one thing that I you know, because I've been to therapy a few times. I think it's important to kind of talk about, you know, some of the struggles and challenges that we have going on. Sometimes you want a third, maybe fourth, fifth opinion, but I feel like somehow you overcame this. Like, there's no animosity in your heart. Where's this compassion come from? Is it something that just came from you and mom planted the seeds? And
yeah, I mean, I'm very spiritual, and you know, I'm a Christian. I know a lot of people don't subscribe to Christianity because of how it came to be with, especially with African people. So I know there's the challenges with that, but then in terms of like just the actual following the spirituality of it, and not necessarily being forgiving to a fault, because that's another topic for another day, but just understanding just, you know, people as they are and having compassion for those situations. And then also, if I'm angry, it's just gonna, at him, it's like a ball. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but if I'm upset with someone, I feel like tension. Anytime the person's name is mentioned, so I'm just like, I don't really care. Like, at the end of the day, I'm fine. And then I also understand he didn't really have a father figure. Like, he didn't have. So if you ask my dad, he actually thinks he was a good dad. Like, that is the crazy part about it. And my cousins, who are my dad's brother's kids, older brother, they were like, oh, you had a good father, because their dad was in Nigeria, and I was like, I had a good father. Sometimes I wouldn't see him for like 6 months at a time. What are you talking about? But to them, I had a great dad because he was there sometimes. Like, he would buy me things sometimes, but then I'm like, I remember a lot of times when he was not, and he needed to, you know. So, but for my own sake, I mean, definitely therapy. Also, just, you know, for my own sake, for my kids' sake, for my marriage sake, you know, I just didn't want to hold on to that, because sometimes my husband would be like, oh, I can't believe, like, your dad just doesn't care. And I'm just like, I don't care. Even my cousin, who's a little younger than me, and her father, she hadn't seen her father probably since we were in middle school. He went to Nigeria and he just came back. He had a whole other family, and then he came back, and, you know, she had 2 sons, you know, everything. And she was like, should I let them see him? And I was like, you know what? That's their grandfather. So, not to say if he was doing like crazy stuff, like, I'm not about like, oh, let's sweep it under the rug, but I was like, you know, if they're not going to understand all of that, they probably will probably want to see their grandfather. And I was like, you can still hold him accountable. I'm not saying just let stuff ride, because I definitely, like, you know, but also too, for your own mental, like, health, you know, let it go or whatever. And just because my kids love my father, and they don't see him that much, and I'm like, you know what, he's their grandfather, he's not even their dad, he doesn't have to be there, but they have their dad. So, like, but they're like, oh, grandpa, and I'm like, he was not, whatever, okay, you know. So, and that's all it needs to be. And when she let her sons, you know, meet her father, my uncle, and she was like, you know, I'm glad I did that, because it was like a weight lifted off. So I'm definitely, please don't anyone interpret this as like condoning bad family members in your life, or people who are like toxic, or, you know, because if you meet my dad, he's very pleasant, and he's a very pleasant man. He's very, you know, personable. It's not like he's rude or anything like that. So it's not like I'm letting my kids around some monster or whatever. So I don't condone that. But in terms of like my own sanity and just myself, like, I'm like, I don't care. You know, that's on him. He has to deal with that, not me.
That's right. I really think this is an important conversation, even though I want to switch gears, but just some final thoughts around this, about the importance of mental health.
Yes.
And the psychosocial ramifications that come with not having certain members in the family, or even some cases abuse we talked about.
Yes.
And it's something that's running rampant in our communities, and we don't talk enough about that. But I want to switch gears here, because you took a route that I thought I was going to go. You know, they say, you know, God laughs at our plans. So, you know, I always was an admirer of Moses, because, you know, for some, he was the first person, the first attorney. You know, he was given the law, and he interpreted the law, and he established the ancient Israelites, and And a lot of those commandments are the foundation of the morality and the moral compass that we supposedly have in this country. But I admire people that go a little above and beyond with school, who challenge themselves. Why did you go down this route? What was it about this field that attracted you? Because I think the way I know Remi, we went to, as I said, Bishop McVinney Middle School, and a lot of folks I know, even though they weren't Catholic, they just wanted to bring their kids to those schools.
Yeah, we weren't Catholic.
Yeah, because it will help to provide some sort of foundation, and there was some sort of disciplinary piece to it. And as someone has been both in private and public schools, I can kind of see this dichotomy. But I always wanted to know. I don't think there's ever enough quote unquote people of color attorneys, let alone women of quote unquote color, because I hate these terms.
I know
it's always done something to me. Yeah. But I want to know what made you go down this route, especially when you consider, you know, all the things that are happening in this world. And but just curious, what made you decide to go down this route?
What made me go to law school? So it was funny. So I actually, so first of all, because I was extremely quiet, the last profession that I ever thought I would go into is law. Because I was like, this requires you to speak in front of people? Absolutely not. I will study, I will hand in a report, but to speak in front of people, no. So that was definitely like not. When I went to undergrad, I went to Tufts University for undergrad.
Oh, shout out to Tufts, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, we can talk about that too if you want. I had it in one of my other podcast episodes. Yes. So yeah,
I went to Tufts for undergrad, and I thought I was going to be a doctor. I wanted to be in OBGYN. Not randomly, I had learned about FGM, and I wanted to be a doctor that did reconstructive surgery. I know this is so different for high school. So they're like, people are like, how are you doing this in high school? But that's what I wanted to do. So that's where I was, you know, what I was thinking about. But then when I got to Tufts, kind of my first year doing the biology classes and things like that. So if you want to do that, your whole world is sciences. So you don't really get, and I think that's kind of part of the problem in the medical field in itself, whatever, your whole world is science. You don't really get a chance to learn about anything else. And so that kind of started the catalyst of me looking for other things. And someone was like, you know, I really think you would make a good lawyer. And I was like, absolutely not, because I was still super shy. I mean, I'm still shy. I mean, you know, so and it had been suggested to me numerous times, and I'm just like, no, I'm scared. I don't like speaking in public. I don't like for people to read my work in public. I don't, you know, like these are just not these things. But then I just got guided towards it when I saw what lawyers could do in the world, and how so many professions, even if the person isn't necessarily practicing law, they have a law degree. And so many, so many presidents have law degrees.
Facts.
Many, you know, CEOs have law degrees. Many, you know, like Fortune 500 companies, non-for-profits, running non-for-profit, like you name it, they have law degrees. So I was just, you know, and I had been talking to they had these, I don't know, groups that they had us in, like when you're your first year, but I kind of still kept on talking with my mentor. I don't know if she was a mentor. I don't know what it was, but it was supposed to help you like transition from like high school to college. And it was I was in the religious studies section, just because they put you in different topics. So that was a topic that it was left over, and they stuck me in it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And she was in that, and she was like, you know, you just don't seem happy when we talk about biology. Like, it's not really, which is crazy, because I love science. I do love science. I still have a passion for science, biology, chemistry, physics. Like, I love those things. I did really well in them, but in college I just was not interested. And when you're not interested, you just don't. It's harder for me to focus on things.
You grew out of it.
Yeah, like it was weird. So it was just, you know, I feel like God guided me to where I am now. And, you know, I didn't know anyone who went to law school, and trust me, it was a struggle, because being a Black woman, being any person who was not white in a law school, forget not a white man, but for white women it's a little bit different because they can like flirt and, you know, be some like guy, you know, some partner's like girlfriend or whatever, and that's cool or whatever. And I'm not minimizing all, because I have white female attorney friends who are totally cool and did not do that, but I'm just saying, like, this is, you know, the way things work. But when, you know, just going through that, I didn't know anybody who went to law school, and I definitely have people being like, well, how are you gonna get to law? How are you gonna pay for it? It's expensive, all this other things. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna go. I don't know. I just knew I was gonna go. So, and that's one thing, once I set my mind to something, is happening.
You're doing, that's right.
Yeah, so, and that's how I got to law school. And then, I mean, my current job, which is like so crazy how I even got into my current position, and then the business and everything it's
given to that.
So we have to be very conscious of that, and especially, again, even if you feel bad or whatever, but you say something that adds to it by way of these two, you become part of it. Right. So the most important thing that I leave you all with this is watch what you post. Word. So it's like we're moving in a generation now, right? Very digital. So that's changing the landscape. So this was almost like very prophetic, a prophecy, someone kind of looking into the future of what could be, right? Because the reality is that whether it's in the school, at a bar, at the church, we are up on our phones. Why? Because we are plugged into the
The workshop tonight was excellent. The kids were engaged, and Walter did a great job. He even had me and Donald answer questions. So can't wait for the next one.
The session was excellent. The kids were really engaged. They really understood and learned a lot about social media and what their impact could be. I'm looking forward to the next session.
See, that's interesting, because I feel like you represent our generation of being multifaceted. Like, there's a little bit of exploration, but also a seeking of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, right? And we're living in a really interesting time right now where people are becoming empowered after, you know, working from home and realizing, yo, I can do this in like 4 hours, but then let me dip and look at taking this class online, or I've been meaning to do this for a little bit. So I see that, and one of those things that I saw that I was kind of like, I wasn't expecting this from Remi, but you never know until you know. I want you to talk to us, because obviously we want to switch off from law school right there, because you know that's a whole journey in itself. You know, and we can go into that. But I want to talk about this thing, because we're here right now as you prepare to do the other side of your life. I want to talk about the pink portal. Talk to me, us. What is the pink portal?
So the pink portal is a lingerie, well, intimate apparel and shapewear now brand that actually my husband started, and he's like upstairs. He's upstairs trying to be quiet, so he's like, no, I can't. You know, he's the Mr. behind the scenes person.
There's always somebody. Remember, it's always the person behind the camera.
Yes.
Not in front.
Yeah, so he is a lot of the stuff. I mean, I definitely take care of the marketing and just a lot, but a lot of things behind the scene, even if it's speaking to people overseas, whatever we have to do, he is on it. So he started it, and he's just kind of like, oh, well, it's a pandemic, and people are going to be home, and they need lingerie. So this, and I was kind of like, well, okay.
Makes sense.
I was kind of like, well, okay, but whatever. So I was not, you know, with it, because my husband comes up, he has a lot of great ideas. He owns an armed security firm. He's the only black-owned armed security firm, which is super hard.
You should interview him, you know?
Yeah, super hard to do. The fact that he even did it, and he is a grinder. So when I say he will grind and get stuff done, he will grind and get it done. So, you know, so I respect him for that. But then he's like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I was like, okay, you're going to do it. I totally didn't even, I was not even interested because I was like, I'm not interested in selling clothing or any items like that. I might open up a practice once I leave the government. That's what I'm just so not, with it. And Buan was here, another McVinney.
Shout out to Buan, another McVinney alum.
And she loves lingerie, and she's like, "Oh, that's a great idea.
What?
You need to, yes."
I would have never thought that.
Yeah, and because she's all about like loving your body and like empowering yourself and all that stuff. So she's just like, "Yeah, I love it." And she's like, and the problem I have is I never can find stuff in my size. And so my husband took that, and he's like, "Yeah, I need to get like plus size lingerie. I'm gonna do this." So he ordered all this stuff. He found like someone to like make these things, and he ordered it. And it came, and it was a mess. It was like this big box, 2 boxes of just stuff. And so he's like, "I don't think I'm gonna do this. This is what the hell? How am I gonna do it?" And I was like, "Relax." So I came because I was teleworking at the time. So on my lunch break, I took a break, went upstairs because it was like in my daughter's room, and I helped him sort everything. And I was like, "Okay, you have the website, get a website." He named the Pink Portal. He was looking for because he's like, it's about women. So he was looking, and I'm saying this in a less crass way, but he's like, he was looking for another way to reference a woman's vagina. And that was what came up. Okay. And yeah, he's a character.
Oh, the Pink Portal.
Yeah. So it's all things women.
Got it.
So that was how it came about, and in that sense. But then as I got involved, I was like, well, this is how you can not only just market it, but I realized women really, when we first put stuff out, and we didn't have models even at first. It was just stock photos, so it was kind of crazy. And I asked Juan, I was like, "Can I use your picture with the fro?" And she was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I put a picture up with the fro, and that was like our main picture. And then we just had like all these stock photos, and people were like really, into it. And I have my undergraduate degrees in women's studies, ironically, and I had like between undergrad and law school, when I was still kind of figuring myself out, like I ran a domestic violence shelter. I did like some brand ambassadors before brand ambassadors were online, when it was like in-person brand ambassadors, brand ambassador modeling, things like that for companies like Jose Cuervo, Adidas, Lipton Iced Tea, random. Right. So I did all those things, so I knew generally about how marketing worked, and I also was aware about how marketing impacts women and how women are viewed because of my studies, and then also just women's sexuality and how women are challenged when we try to embrace our sexuality. So that was, that was another thing or whatever for me. So wrapped up, it's that's kind of what birthed the Pink Portal into kind of developing into what it is now, where we are, about not necessarily sex, but just like selling the idea of embracing your sexuality, embracing your body as it is. Whatever it is, whatever, you lost weight, you didn't lose weight, you had surgery, you didn't have surgery, whatever it is, like we want you to embrace that and celebrate that and just celebrate being you. So that's basically how it came to be and what it's about.
I think that what you're doing is so important, particularly in the age of, women speaking up, the Me Too movement, I think even Victoria's Secret started getting like a plus size, trend, understanding that not all women's body types are made up alike. And I think that further exacerbates this stereotype that a woman should look a certain way. When really, when you break down to it, you take, with all due respect, your clothes off, it's not exactly what you think it was when you're covered up, you feel me? But I really appreciate that, just because, and I'm going to say this, and some people might be like, "Oh, Walter," but I must say, I think lingerie is really great. I really have to say that, because I really feel that it always made, the women I've had in my life, or I'm sure men could agree, it really insinuates and really brings out the woman, Like, no matter what size you are, it's like, it makes you feel, there's a sense of empowerment in there, you feel me?
Yeah,
and I say that because it was interesting to me. One relationship I had, she shared with me that her partner got upset that one day she came out in a lingerie. He felt that she looked like a SLUT. Like, why are you wearing that? And she thought, well, I wanted to be a SLUT for you. And I was like, but it was like, as a result of that, psychologically, she always felt like, oh, I don't want to wear lingerie. I don't want to. And I was like, oh, but that's cool. I'm cool with that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting. I really think that's dope. And I guess this is the question, ultimately, based on what we've been discussing, is this. You went to law school, and I'm probably leaning toward getting into spirituality here because, you know, I went to school for theology. That's my background. I'm a socio-theologian. And I went on this journey because I was supposed to go to law school, right, God? And you know, I went through this journey, and it changed me and informed me, and because I was learning thyself and trying to figure myself out. But I feel like a lot of us that came out of McVinney, even Mount Pleasant, as I've interviewed people in high school and a lot of my colleagues in grad school and etc. But coming back home and hearing you talk, and even Hilda, it's like there was a recipe, something that was cooking there, despite the challenges we had growing up in the hood. You know, this is real stuff. For us to overcome this, I always ask people this, and I want to know from you, as somebody that wants to empower women, that's an entrepreneur, went to law school, like, where's this drive come from? Where's this passion come from? Was it a person that said you got to do this? Was it something that you saw with you later in life? I'm always curious to know, where does this come from?
You know, I honestly think it's God. And I know it sounds like, you know, totally cliche, you know, but in terms of like God putting the right people in my life and just making me the type of person that just wants to succeed. Like I need if I set myself to something, you know, I pray about it and everything and make sure that it's, you know, in line with what needs, you know, what should happen in my life. And it's just, that's just how it's been. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna but again, it's that foundation too, like I said, God, in terms of not like, oh, this is just happening, but I think gave me a mother who was really resilient and raised me to be really resilient. So it's helped me with the business and with my job, because again, I'm still, you know, battling that because I'm a Black woman with a law degree in a managerial position. So that brings up a whole bunch of other, you know, things, and this is it's kind of like, okay, I want to succeed, and I also want to for like to be able to fully be myself, because I think also the other part of me, especially with the business, that makes me, that is just like, I don't want to be one-sided. You know, I want to have these multi-sided. I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I have my law degree. Yes, I work for the government. Yes, but so I'm, you know, structured in that way. But then I also have these other parts of me, and I'm very outspoken about politics. I'm very outspoken about race and like oppression and things like that. And so these are all parts of me. And so that's what's the other part that has driven me, is just the idea that I want to be myself.
Speak authentically.
Yeah, so all of this is me. So if I want to be myself, there's a part of me that likes structure and being able to, you know, like I have, you know, working for the government, I'm being a manager and doing all these things, and I learned a lot from the job. There's obviously a part of me that wanted to go to law school, and I went to law school. There's a part of me that you know, wanted to run a business. There's a part of me that supports women and wants to see, you know, women succeed and wants women to be, you know, embrace their sexuality. There's a part of me that likes the marketing aspect in the business, and so all of these. So it's that drive to just be me, and be free to be me. And you know, once I cleared it with ethics, my boss was like, I don't know how you're doing all this, but knock yourself out. Yeah, right. Whatever. She's like, yeah, it doesn't violate anything. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm just doing this stuff. So I'm able to be myself, and so that's really ultimately what's, you know, driving me, is just that desire to just be Remi, which is every part of.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right. Check this out real quick. Okay. I mean, I think you hit the heart of the question that I'm about to follow up, because you said being authentically you. So what is the advice you would give to that young person, that young Black woman who maybe want to go to law school or go the entrepreneur route, but you have a host of wisdom based on the time you've been here on earth and the places that God has taken you. But what's one piece of advice you would give that young sister?
Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't be afraid of your own voice.
That's right.
Especially being a Black woman, and in the situations that I've been in, and growing up in the inner city, and growing up in New England, which is a whole, all those things, and seeing, I would say, just being comfortable with you. That I wished that the times that I spent like beating myself up or being like, oh, maybe I was too harsh, or maybe I should have been more quiet, or maybe all those things, like of being afraid of my own voice. I wish if I could go back, I'd be like, you know what, and then years later to find out people like, oh yeah, you were right about that, and like, yeah, trusting your own instincts and relying on your own voice and being confident in yourself. I wish I could go back and tell myself that. That's
right. And the reason you're bugging me out, because, and this is how we spiritually connected right now, because rest in peace to Dr. Cone, the founder of Black Theology. What did he always say in the start of his classes? Those who took it, you must find your voice. That's all he said. He says, I'm a spiritual boxer, so I use my intellectualism to let people know what time it is, Remi, as we always do in the Know That Show podcast, is we invite guests to share something that comes out of their shells, man. So what you got to share for us today?
So this is my grandmother's lapa. So is the lapa is like the wrap that you, like the wrap you put on. Like, so, as I mentioned, my grandparents are Liberian, and oh my gosh, my kids are like going up the stairs. My grandparent guy.
Shout out to the kids.
Yeah, you guys gotta stop going up and down the stairs. So it is the only thing I own of my grandmother from Liberia. So my mom came to the U.S. The way she came here. So, and this is kind of a long story, but that's the only way to make this make sense. So when she came here, my grandfather was the director of Interpol for Liberia. He's also the chief of police for Liberia. So anything that he signed, if you took it to the U.S. embassy, they'd give you a visa right away. And my mother's boyfriend was in the U.S. So she's like, well, I want to go to the U.S. He didn't want her to go to the U.S. He was like, oh, all your friends are going to France and this place and that place. He wanted her to go to Europe. So she went to his office and she's like, oh, Paja, could you just sign this letter for me? And he's like, oh, okay, Liz, whatever. He just signed it, not knowing that was like a letter for her. So she took it to the embassy and she got her visa because he signed it. And he had been to the U.S. multiple times. He went to school in the U.S. He partnered with the U.S. government. So it was just, he signed it. She went, she got her visa, didn't tell her parents. And she didn't tell them until, and she saved up her allowance and everything, and that's how she got her ticket to come. And so when she was leaving, she told my grandmother, like right when she was about to leave, and so the only thing my grandmother, she took her wrap off. They keep like another wrap under it so she wasn't like naked, and gave her this. Because she's like, and she was like, I wish you had told me so I could give you more. And so she gave her this, and this is what my mom brought from Liberia. So I have it. So, yes.
So this is going to get passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's on the whole down.
Yes. So, I mean, I have pictures of my grandmother, but that is it. Not a picture in this. This is...
It's beautiful. I like that. Keep the generation going. And, the quilt and the styling, that's so, like, traditional. Afro-Indigenous, like we always hold the cloths real close, and I also look at that as it's so fitting because you're a priestess, you know what I'm saying? You don't even know it, right? I think that's beautiful, and actually this is from Nigeria. When I went to Nigeria too, so shout out to June because he kind of put it apart and added some other pieces to it. But
it's really nice.
But Remi, I'm so proud of you, yo.
Thank you.
I'm so proud. I'm so humble.
I'm proud of you. This is awesome.
Again, I did this, believe it or not, it's been very therapeutic for me just to reconnect with family and friends. And I wanted to, the reason we did this podcast it got revitalized because when COVID hit real badly, we were all at home. I had the equipment, true story family, so shout out to all the subscribers, shout out to the people that continue to follow us. This is only going to get bigger and bigger, and this is just an opportunity for us really to, you know, share our stories so we can empower the young people, because that's what it's about, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. As we always do, in the Know Thyself podcast, we end with a quote. And this one comes to another goddess, Shirley Chisholm.
Okay.
You already know.
Yeah.
Shout out. And it reads as such. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Peace, family.
Roll up the lot, wood in the raw, feeling relaxed like a day at the spa. Sweet as shiatsu, I need a massage. I'm always myself, I don't need a mirage.